Let's get into it.
I don't know if it was malicious. Probably not. But I do know it was another WTF moment. My question to ownership would be, was it worth it? And the architect, and I use that term loosely, given there wasn't much architecture, more finger painting with this team. It's like the running of the Bulls in Pamplona. You know someone is going to get hurt.
That's what you all need to understand here, right now.
Memo to the Edmonton Oilers and their fans. I'm sure you've dissected this Stanley Cup final from most every angle, evaluated strengths and weaknesses of both clubs, identified pathways to victory and a championship over the Florida Panthers. But there's one thing that probably escaped your analysis: the Campbell factor. Take it from us here in Vancouver. Don't discount that Gregory Campbell is a Florida Panthers AGM. We didn't think much of the Boston Bruins fourth-line center in 2011. Didn't think he'd have that much of effect on a series. Then Aaron Rome hit Nathan Horton and got one of the longest suspensions in the history of the Cup final, 4 games. That suspension was handed down by NHL executive Mike Murphy, who was filling in for his boss. Colin Campbell, you may have to remember, had to recuse himself from the role of NHL disciplinarian because son Gregory was competing for the Boston Bruins. Murphy admitted that, being thrust into the role, he consulted Brian Burke, former NHL disciplinarian, former Canucks executive, in deliberating the Aaron Rome suspension. Of course, everyone in BC knew that Brian Burke was on bad terms with Canucks chairman Francesco Aquilini and then GM Mike Gillis. Rome's hit was late, caused injury, was deserving of supplemental discipline. But 4 games in the final, that's somewhere between 8 and 48 games in the regular season, depending on who you ask. Prevailing wisdom, 1 game playoff suspension is like 2 games in the regular season. But how about this? Brendan Shanahan, 2012, when he was NHL disciplinarian. Quote, "If you think about it, that 1 game in the finals is the equivalent of a 12-game suspension."
Interesting.
Jason Bruff's byline on that story, actually, for NBC back in 2012.
No kidding.
So the Canucks felt hard done by, and rightfully so. Colin Campbell had already admitted in emails that he was a venting hockey dad when he questioned his underling, director of officiating Stephen Walkham, about penalties against Gregory's team. In no other world than Gary Bettman's do you get a venting hockey dad and in charge of on-ice officiating, whereby you abuse power to vent at those in your charge. That has a chilling effect and directs future behavior. It's atrocious management, and in most realms would be grounds for dismissal. Colin Campbell remains employed by the NHL, albeit in a different role. A lack of transparency continues to dog NHL officiating. The NHL itself remains an old boys club, and Bettman continues not to recognize the conflict of interest in his midst, nor subscribe to transparency. You've been warned, Edmonton. So welcome, Matt, for today. We invite your feedback. Feedback channels as follows on email live at sekeresandprice.com. Can text 778-402-9680. It's the Great Clips text message inbox. On Twitter, I'm at Sekeres and Price. Welcome at presentation of Northlands Golf Course. 6 to 90-day reservations for a $10 per player fee based on availability. Details, golfnorthlands.com.
Worse yet, Nathan Horton is also an ex-Panther. So perhaps he'll be in the ear. Remember what happened to me. Don't let it happen again.
Oh, it's just, so I was looking in this final earlier in the week. I was like, oh, Gregory Campbell. He works for the Florida Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
What could possibly go wrong?